Hello and welcome to the Meet the Parents podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 66 of the Meet the Parents podcast. We're back from our summer holidays and we're ready and raring to go. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and joining me this week are Hannah from Budding Smiles and a Lifestyle Log, John from Dad You Geek, and Simon from Man vs Pink. Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
So, seeing as we've been off the air for over a month, on this week's podcast we're going to catch up with what we've all been up to this summer and our thoughts on those three magic little words, back to school. So, the summer holidays. For some parents it's a seemingly never-ending form of torture, trying to keep the kids entertained. For others, it's an opportunity to spend some quality time with the children, whether it's going away on holiday, doing day trips, or just being at home with them. No two families are identical in terms of how they approach the long break. So, what have we each been up to over the summer holidays? Let's start with Simon. Now, your summer has been more than just about the school holidays. You've also traded in your role as a stay-at-home dad and re-entered the world of work after, what was it, nearly 5 years, I guess. So
It was pretty much exactly 5 years to the day. I think I went back to work on July 5th. And it was around about that time, 5 years ago, that I kind of did the handover with my wife, as it were, and she went back to work and I was kind of on my home alone. So 5 years, yeah, exactly.
For anyone who doesn't know, tell us a bit about the new job.
My job is I'm working for a kids entertainment and development app called Hopster, and I am doing social media with them.
Was it a big adjustment for you returning to work after so long? And was there anything that surprised you or that maybe you underestimated in some way?
It was all pretty swift. Like from hearing about the job to actually starting, it was about 4 weeks, and that was through application and 2 interviews, and it was pretty quick. The weird thing that I quite like is the commute. I really realised, and I knew this early on actually when I was at home with the daughter, was I kind of missed the commute, and which may sound funny, but I realised like for so many years, this was a period of the day that I had to myself, that I would, whether it was walking or listening to music or reading books or whatever, this was a time I had to myself, and I really miss that. I've read more books in the last sort of couple of months than I have in the last 5 years.
It's a reasonably lengthy commute you've got, isn't it? So is that what you've been doing with it, mostly reading books?
It's not so bad, actually. I mean, I'm in a sort of commuter town, so it's the actual train from where I live to London is only 35 to 40 minutes, and then there's another bus ride from there to where I work, which is in Old Street. I'd say, like door to door, it can be about an hour 10, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's that long. And in fact, when I think back to living in London, that was probably the kind of length of a commute you'd have anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And how has going back to work affected the way you've spent the school holidays with your daughter this year?
One thing that was terrible timing was that I finally get a job 2 weeks before the summer holiday starts, and we're suddenly scrambling around like, what the hell are we going to do for 6 weeks of childcare? So it was a sort of Tetris game making that work, when I don't have any leave yet either. Because I've just started. So how did it affect my summer? Well, I pretty much had 2 days home with our daughter by myself. That was it. I kind of took a week off, but really it was 4 days around the bank holiday, and then we went away at the tail end of that because it was our 10th wedding anniversary. So we thought we should go away and do something. Yeah, so like before, I would have spent pretty much the whole 6 weeks with our daughter. Then this was the complete reverse. So that's the difference. We've never had to kind of really deal with this, and I've done freelance jobs here and there, but never really had to deal with me not being here to look after our daughter on a long-term basis.
And what's been the impact on her? Because obviously it's a big change to what she's been used to as well.
So when I got the job and I told her, because she's been, aware that I'm one of the few dads that's home. But she was happy to have that. I told her, I've got a job and what's going to mean. And she was just so excited because she says, oh, Daddy, I get to go to after school club with my friends. And other parents have said that to them as well. Like their kids have said, no, Mummy, when can you get a job so I can go to after school club? Yeah, no, it hasn't really affected at all. I think that's just what they say. The kids sort of feel things deeper, as we know. And there's been a bit of an adjustment. I've always been the one there all the time. And now it's there's a much more shared aspect to all those aspects of parenting, from the school lead, the school run, and, who knows more about what's going on at school and that kind of thing. It's a bit of a shift, but she seems to have taken it in a stride so far. But, it's only 1 week back into the new school year. So fingers crossed, it's all okay.
Cool. And you mentioned that you'd celebrated your 10th anniversary, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But have you been away anywhere, or is there anything else that you've done over the summer that you'd like to share with us?
The rest of my family went away to Switzerland while I was at work, and then my wife's mum came over from New Zealand, so she was here with us for a bit, and that actually helped out with another week of childcare. But yeah, for our 10th wedding anniversary, it's kind of something we hadn't really talked about much because we were on one income and things were limited, but we hadn't really talked about what we would do. And then then I got a job and we had now some extra money to figure out something to do, but we left it quite late, so we just kind of basically looked working on the Eurostar that we liked, and we went to Bruges for a few days, which was lovely. Never been there before, and we've always loved traveling around by train. Actually, our honeymoon, we got married in Kent, and we got the Eurostar to Europe for our honeymoon 10 years ago, so it was really nice to kind of go back on the Eurostar and take the train across.
Thanks, Simon. Now, Hannah, you've been through quite a similar experience insofar that you also made the transition from being a stay-at-home parent to returning to full-time work, although I guess your circumstances are slightly different insofar that you've been back a little bit longer than Simon, and Toby isn't yet school age. But how has being back at work affected what you've done this summer?
I mean, obviously, it has meant that sort of family times or my time with the kids as well as Phil's, are restricted to just the weekends. But I actually found the last year really stressful because I had a newborn and a just 2-year-old, and all of our regular clubs and groups and things were cancelled for the holidays, and all of the sort of child-friendly places, all the soft plays and everything were just absolutely manic. And because my two were so young, I just didn't dare go to places because they would just get bashed around in typical child fashion. And so actually I've kind of preferred this summer. Is that really bad to say, that I've actually preferred just being at work and then having time with Phil there as well on the weekends, because it just has been a much more natural thing to do. Then on the weekends, we've gone to places like Belton House. We've really used our National Trust membership an awful lot this summer. I took the kids both to the beach on Bank Holiday Monday. So, yeah, it's different in the fact I've certainly not seen friends as much. But I think I've actually found it far less stressful than last year.
Yeah, and I think if a lot of us are being honest, we'd echo, or at least understand, the sentiments that you say, where work can almost seem to be a bit of a blessing in disguise, or a relief from the stresses and strains of 6 weeks worth of childcare. So, is there anywhere else that you've been, or anything else in particular that you've done with the kids over the holiday?
We've not taken any time off work to do anything specific, because we're at Centre Parks. We went to Centre Parks at the end of April, and we're going back mid-November. So we didn't take any time off during the summer. But as I say, we've been to tons of National Trust places. I had a friend's baby shower up near Grimsby, so I just packed the kids and some buckets and spades into the car and decided to go to Cleethorpes and build sandcastles and have chips and all those things that you simply have to do when you're at a British seaside. And actually that was quite a big thing for me, because I don't really do beaches. I even wrote a blog post about a year ago about how much I really detest beaches. So that was actually a really big deal for me to go with 2 toddlers on my own, and it was really nice. So that was probably one of the highlights of the summer, actually, just not just surviving that, but actually enjoying it.
Do you still hate beaches though?
I'd still sooner be in a jungle or on a roller coaster or trekking up a mountain. Yeah.
I hate beaches as well, so it's interesting.
The sand just gets everywhere, and I'm a pasty ginger, so I'm just not naturally built to be there.
And yeah, I mean, you have to enjoy being in a slightly different rhythm because you haven't got school-aged kids yet, and you're not bound by the same school holidays and the timing restrictions that the rest of us are. And I look back on those days now when you could go on holiday in May while everyone was still in school, or in November like you'll be doing again this year. And it's when you're trapped in that cycle of paying premium prices along with everyone else. It's these are days definitely to make the most of while you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Toby starts school, exactly a year from now, and so we need to try and pack everything in as much as we can between now and next sort of late June to be able to capitalise on not needing to be restricted by school holidays, and then that'll be it for the foreseeable, forevermore.
Yeah. So was there anything that you wished that you'd had time to do over the summer, or maybe stuff that you absolutely want to do before Toby starts school next year?
We did have to cancel a trip to Hastings to go and see some friends this weekend just gone because my car very annoyingly failed its MOT in fairly spectacular fashion, and we needed to go and sort out a replacement because Phil and I both work about 30 odd miles away from home in opposite directions, so we need two cars. So we ended up having to cancel Hastings, unfortunately. So I would have liked to have seen my friends. I think in terms of before Toby starts school, I just want to get away as much as we can. So as I mentioned, we're going to Center Parcs again, and that's somewhere we've absolutely loved. I have toyed with the idea of going to Disney as well, in Paris, not Florida, not just yet. But so there's a few things, but I think really it's just a case of making the most of those bits of time that we've got. I don't think we'll do anything huge, just travelling around and going on little mini breaks really as and when we can.
John, let's move on to you now. I know you took some time off from work to go away this summer, so where did you go on holiday?
I did. So we, our main holidays, well, I say our main holiday still to come this year. We're going away in October to Disney. So that's where all the expenses going this year. But we went to see in-laws, the wife's family are from Pembrokeshire. So we spent a good 10 days down there, which was lovely. I love that part of the world. And we went and explored some of the beaches we've not been to before, and back to some of our old favourite haunts as well.
And your younger daughter's in secondary rather than primary school. So yeah, does she spend her holidays differently now compared to when she was, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old?
Yeah, I've kind of give up any hope of trying to get her to do any kind of activities that are planned or anything like that. So she kind of looks after herself and makes her own plans with friends to go out and keep herself entertained, which is quite nice. And I unfortunately had to use some of my annual leave to do some decorating that I've been promising the wife I'd get done since we moved in September, October last year. And I thought she might help me with that, but she made me cups of tea and that was about it, and locked herself away in her bedroom. So yeah, that I thought it would be a nice week of father-daughter bonding with some painting, which kind of, she just looked at me, no, I'm not doing that.
Cups of tea, what more do you want, man?
Well, yeah, when I say cups of tea, it's like, can I have that tea now? Yeah, can I have that tea? Any chance of that tea? And yeah, a few reminders and a few nasty looks when I was start decorating early and she was still asleep. That kind of teenager, Dawn of the Dead kind of woken up, open the door and just glare at you. And I was just like, uh-oh.
And is there anything else that you've been doing other than work, of course, over the summer? Or is there anything that you wish you'd done that you didn't quite get round to doing?
I wish I'd been able to spend more time with Katie. I do have that National Trust membership that we don't use anywhere near enough. I think weather/time got away from us. Didn't have much for summer, and trying to motivate anyone to come out of the house with me when it's slightest possibility of rain is always a difficult one. So yeah, I wish we'd have gone to see some more of the National Trust properties that are out there. But this isn't sponsored by National Trust, by the way. That's twice it's been mentioned.
Although if they'd like to sponsor us, please do contact me.
More than happy. Yeah.
Well, I guess that just leaves me. Honestly, I'm not really sure where the 6 weeks went. I mean, to start with, the boys spent 4 days with their grandparents in London doing lots of, London-y stuff and generally getting spoiled rotten as usual, which I guess is kind of the job description of grandparents, isn't it? What else have we done? We've also been to a couple of 2020 cricket matches, once to Lords for an evening game, and then to the Oval for a friend's birthday party. And as part of the latter, we got to meet Andrew Flintoff and Dominic Cork, which, it has to be said, impressed the adults in the group a lot more than the kids. And then in the same way that Simon celebrated his 10th anniversary, we celebrated our 20th, and then we rounded off the summer with our big holiday for the year, which was a 2.5 week road trip across France, Germany, Switzerland and Italy. And in total we covered best part of 2,500 miles in the car. We broke the kids at least twice each. Heather managed to break a toe and lose her purse, and to top it all off, the first thing that happened when we got home at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night was a bottle of wine fell out of the boot and smashed itself on our driveway. So I suppose, as they say, bad things do come in threes. It was definitely one of our bigger and busier summers, and we definitely find that each passing year, as the kids get older and can cope with a bit more, we're doing more and more stuff with them over the summer, and we're able to give them more and more independence as well. So, although I think for them, going back to school must feel like a break by comparison. And that's the story of our respective 2017 summer holidays. It will be Christmas before we know it. All good things must come to an end, or thank God the little blighters are back at school now, delete as applicable. Either way, it's a new school year, or at least for those of us with school-age kids, and an opportunity to plaster those all-important first day of school in their new uniforms pictures all over Facebook and Instagram. Now, the four of us have kids of different ages, ranging from those who've left school to those who've yet to venture beyond the school gates. So we've got a range of experiences and feelings about the start of a new school year. So, Simon, your daughter has just started year 1, hasn't she? So how's she finding it so far? I guess it's only a week in, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to say. It's only a week. But she had just an amazing first year at school. Just took to it so well and loved it. It's just kind of what you want from your kids starting school. I know like reception is very different than the rest of school. It's very much more like a transition from kindergarten and preschools to school. But I don't know. I just think this time last year she couldn't read. That unsurprisingly, like she couldn't read. That was just not something she'd learned yet. Really, she could read her name and things like that. And tonight she was reading The Fantastic Mr. Fox on her own. It's kind of astonishing the level at which they learn and the level that she's learned and the kind of thing she's reading. So that's, in terms of that, I just want to, my wife and I just really hope that continues, especially that love of reading and that love of learning that she's got. I mean, that's the key, isn't it? You just want to try and keep that going while they grind it out of you and they grind you into your exams and your SATs and things. But just to try and keep that love of learning, which we've done our best to inspire and as best we can, and she seems to have.
Again, we touched on this earlier, but last year you were in a position where you were effectively heading up school run duties. Now, how are things different now you're back at work? Is it something you're missing at all?
It's early days, but yeah, I did kind of like sort of, meeting the parent. That was kind of the when I got to know the parents was hanging around the school ground, whether in the morning or the pickup. And now we're dropping off at breakfast club and we're picking up after school club, and that's not there yet. But at least I had that year of getting to know them. So that's good. Hopefully, it's as much for our benefit as our daughter's benefit, and those all important play dates and getting those things set up, and that social network for all of us. And now we're in the Tetris-like game of working out who does drop off, who does pick up, and who's got meetings on, who can't, who has to leave London at what time. And yeah, like I remember last year I started a Google Calendar just to keep track of like our daughter's play dates and school activities. And now it's basically it's showing up with my wife and I, like who's doing what on what day, because it's so hard to keep track of, like who's doing what.
Yeah, and we're the same. I think we'd really struggle to survive without our shared family calendar, and all our holidays are managed by spreadsheets and so on as well, just to make sure that we've got cover for holidays and half terms and everything as well. And Hannah, Toby won't be starting school for another year, but is it something that you and Phil have started to think about yet?
Very much so, because we live in quite a small village. We have got a school in the main village that our little hamlet is attached to, but there's also several other nice schools around. So over the next few months, we're going to be going and looking around those with a view of what our top 3 is going to be when we come to submitting our applications at the end of the year. It's crazy. It's just I can't quite believe that we're at this point already. And I find, because Toby is a very, I think the politically correct word is spirited. He's a very spirited child. He is completely hyperactive from dawn to dusk, and often overnight as well. He doesn't focus on things. You cannot sit him down and teach him things. He's incredibly clever, but he has to learn everything through doing and experiencing. So I feel incredibly sorry for his future teachers, but it does make it feel very important to Phil and I that we choose the right school. And it's a case of, have you had children who are rather hyperactive and less able to concentrate than others? And really that's going to be the key for us, is just asking them about their experiences with other children like Toby, and that's going to be a huge part of our decision making.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, we discovered something similar, or at least we went through something similar when we were first looking at primary schools. And the most insightful questions I think you can get out of a school are when you ask them how they deal with things that are outside the norm. So how do you deal with a hyperactive child? How do you deal with a child who has learning difficulties? Or conversely, how do you deal with children who are faster and brighter and need their attention stimulated much more than others? So they're really good questions to ask of schools, and I think that's what really gives you a good feel for which schools will be best for your child, because it's a different experience for every parent.
Yeah, and it's different for every child as well. I mean, obviously Martha's still she's only 1, and yet already pretty much from day one we could see how completely different they are from one another, and I don't think we'll have the same concerns when it comes to Martha starting school, because she's stubborn and she's feisty and she's a clever little poppet, but she really is more of that child that'll just go with the flow and she'll be happy wherever she goes. Whereas with Toby, it feels like it's a much more important decision, because if he's going to be there for the next sort of 6-7 years, then we need to make sure it's a place he's actually going to thrive in and not end up with the label of naughty kid.
John, Katie's in, what year is it now?
Year 8.
Year 8, okay. And how's she found her first few days?
Good question. There's always a bit of unsettlement for her that, becomes very unsettled that the timetable's completely changed again for this year. So she found a struggle actually in year 7, continually changing classes, etc. But she seems to be coping okay so far. For her, it feels like she's trying to find her feet again. So I think she always gets a little bit anxious around the new term at school. But it's going okay so far.
How's it been for you? Because when you're a parent and your first child goes to school for the first time, obviously it's a huge, big, exciting, scary thing. But you've been through September and back to school more times than the rest of us. In your experience, is the start of a new school year something that just becomes less of a big thing as your kids grow older?
No, the only panic we have is trying to remember when it is. So we can never remember which day she actually goes back to school and if there's an inset day. Helpfully, her school this year, their mobile app was 2 years out of date. So I got completely the wrong day and then had a mild panic that she should have been at school on a Monday when she didn't actually start till the next day, which was handy. But one thing does get easier the older they get is Katie, for some reason, her growth rate has slowed right down. So all of the school uniform stuff we'd bought at the beginning of the summer, we knew was definitely going to fit still. Whereas in the past, that's not been the case, especially during junior school. You'd buy something at the beginning of the summer holiday so that you didn't leave it to the last minute, and then you try it on in a couple of weeks in the run up and it doesn't fit anymore, and then you have the panic and you're like, oh no. But yeah, it's been okay this year, and it gets easier, to be honest. Senior schools doesn't have so much of the stress of getting ready for year 7, slightly different, but once you're in senior school, it's slightly more straightforward.
I don't know about you guys, but my social media timelines last week seemed to be full of people who were doing all their back to school shopping at the last minute. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of last minute panic buying going on, which I guess, you always run the risk, don't you, as you say, if you buy new clothes at the beginning of the holiday, that they've outgrown them by the end of it.
Yeah, I think the worst we had was 3 times we had to go and purchase new uniform because Katie was growing at an absolutely rapid rate.
Yeah, we had that with school shoes this year. We kind of thought, oh, they'll be all right. And then we kind of got to like the weekend before. We're like, no, it's not going to be all right.
To be honest, that's the one thing we forgot to check this year. And we did have that nervous look to each other when Katie was putting her school shoes on. She was like, yeah, no, they're fine. Like,
for us, with our 3 kids, actually this year's a relatively easy ride for us. I mean, last year was reception year for Cara, so that was a big change for her, obviously. Whereas, this year it's just a case of the kids moving up a year into years 5, 3, and 1, respectively, and we still have the luxury of them all being in the same school. But with Isaac now in year 5, we're getting to that time where it's time for us to start thinking about secondary schools, which brings a whole new level of decisions and stress. It never really stops, does it? And that's it for this episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find us all online. Hannah?
I'm at Budding Smiles on social media, and the blog is buddingsmiles.co.uk.
And John?
At DadYouGeek on all social media and dadyougeek.co.uk.
And Simon?
And I blog as Man vs Pink, Man vs Pink, so manvspink.com, and same handle on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And I'm at Thatcham Dad on social media, and my blog is slouchingtowardsthatcham.com. You can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. You can also follow us on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks very much for listening, and do please join us again next week. Good night.